Welcome, everyone. This is Blue Marble Week, our third of 12 events celebrating Earth's first selfie. The event was actually started to celebrate Earth's first selfie, which was taken on December 7th, 1972 by the crew of Apollo 17. We here at the Foundation for the Future, along with some of our phenomenal partners, Michael Lane at LiftPort and some others, created this event primarily to accelerate space's infrastructure development. We see it as the first step to creating a safe, sustainable gateway to outer space. And we're talking near-term space infrastructure from the year 2020 to the year 2035. And this is so that we can do what it takes now to expand further into the future as needed. We really have three goals with this event. First is to accelerate space infrastructure development. The second is to connect this wonderful, vibrant community of thinkers and doers, and we're thrilled to see this event growing month after month. Third, we really want to collect this data, this information, your stories, your innovations, everything that this community contributes. We will actually be sharing to Congress, with Congress, as we further expand our reach and as we try to pass the Space Act, which Tim Chrisman with the foundation will expand on in a moment. We also could use support from our community. Again, thank you all for participating. We really appreciate your interest. And starting with speakers, we're always excited to hear more viewpoints and again, expand this circle. If you know any really phenomenal speakers in our industry, please let us know if you'd like to volunteer. We're thrilled. Also, sponsors and co-hosts. This month, we're thrilled to announce that the Space Force Association will be co-hosting with us. We've had a lot of help from Bill Wolf. Thank you so much. And they've really helped develop our program and what we're going to talk about, and also bring in some speakers. So today's topic will be strategic space, which is exciting. This is the big picture stuff. This isn't necessarily the nitty gritty. This incorporates everything from security and art and sport and culture and all aspects of cislunar strategy, not just the typical nuts and bolts. So we're really excited about that. So again, thank you all for joining us. We are excited to have you. We're excited to kick off 2 days of speaking. And without further ado, I would like to kick it over to Tim Chrisman, our co-founder here at the foundation, and really our fearless leader. He has such vision. It's inspiring, and it's a pleasure to work with him every day.
Thank you, Lila.
Let me intro you real quick here. Sorry to pause too long. Tim Chrisman is a former CIA intelligence officer who supported the National Space Council. He's a retired Army intelligence officer and a former intelligence advisor to the Joint Staff at the Pentagon. He holds 2 master's degrees, one in intelligence studies and one in international relations and affairs from American University. Tim is the author of the book, Humanity in Space, and of various articles about the expanse of our civilization in space. Tim's next challenge and mission is to make space accessible, survivable, and ultimately boring enough to be routine. Tim Chrisman.
Thanks again, Lila. So as I'm setting up the slides here for the sort of intro to us here at the foundation, I wanted to expand on what Lila was talking about with Blue Marble Week. We are putting this on once a month. And this is a multi-day event that we liken to a merger of a Silicon Valley pitch, a TED Talk, and congressional testimony rolled into one. We chose those three terms deliberately, not just because they sound cool. Silicon Valley pitches are about new ideas, exciting, flashy, and on the edge of possible. TED's mission is to spread ideas. And congressional testimony is about presenting ideas to decision makers. And that's where we see Blue Marble Week as a tool for the space community writ large to be able to plug into decision makers in DC, because as Lila mentioned, we use things we learn, sound bites that are said, and in some cases, use the connections made as we interact with members of Congress and their staff. And we're doing that because, in general, Congress thinks space is fiction. It's something that will have to be dealt with when it needs to be dealt with. In some cases, the thought is hundreds of years from now. In other cases, whenever China actually starts beating us. And so Blue Marble Week is meant to be a crowdsourcing of new and innovative ideas about space. They may not be new to most of you, but they are new to many here in DC in the halls of power. And we need you, as Lila said, first and foremost for the ideas you bring. We don't have all of the ones we need, and we need more voices in this community. We've been asked a lot why we do Blue Marble Week as often as we do. Part of it is that crowdsourcing of ideas, but another part is that community is fragile. And one of the #1 goals of us here at the foundation is a community of doers around the need for space infrastructure. And because community is fragile, we recognize that having one-off events or annual gatherings is not the way to rapidly and successfully build that network and community of people around a goal. So here we have Blue Marble Week. I want to shift now to talking about us here at the foundation. This is the 3rd Blue Marble Week we've put on. And for the most part, we have interspersed the about us as we go. This is the first time we're trying out actually doing a formal introduction of who we are. And the reasons why we are. In my talks, I get asked a lot, why did you think the space industry needed another foundation? And I like to joke that I didn't. In fact, I didn't even mean for us to be a foundation. I just named the organization foundation because I used to build houses in Alaska, and a foundation to me meant the base from which everything else could be built. Well, when you're interacting with members of Congress, with corporate executives, there's an unspoken assumption that foundations are grant-making and educational organizations. Nobody notices the bottoms of their houses. But the bigger question is, why us? Why do we exist? And that's what this presentation is meant to answer. And so no good about us presentation can exist without a clear understanding of the vision, mission, and values, or the purpose, direction, and motivating factors behind the organization. These statements, these collection of words emerged over the course of several months with the help of Lane, Lila, and others to distill down the ultimate aim of us at the foundation. And at its core, we are organized around an idea that America is on the precipice of an amazing explosion of activity, and that is in space. Ultimately, our future as a country and around the world lies up. But to get there, something must be done first. There's been the adventurers, the early adopters, so to speak, in space, the 500 plus men and women who have gone to space. Those are the explorers of old. It's now time for the early entrepreneurs, the settlers, and the adventurers to venture forth into this new frontier. And to do that, they will need the infrastructure to live, work, and survive in. And that is the missing piece between NASA pushing the envelope of what is known and possible and understood, and Space Force as they begin to stand up and serve and protect the free and fair commerce of space. And so we are advocating for the creation of this smart space infrastructure. In part, it is an attempt to ensure that our kids can go to space and come back and it not be thought of as anything more special than a ski trip to Colorado or Vermont. That's ambitious, that's wild, and it's crazy. But that's what we believe is eminently possible and possible very soon. And that is informed by our values around we're not willing to wait for tomorrow what can be accomplished right now. Because we don't accept limits that are imposed by design, by history, or by tradition. We try to understand where those limits came from and provide solutions so that they can be overcome. And ultimately, we want to ensure that the dreams of Apollo are brought down to earth for everyone. Most space organizations talk about how space should be accessible to all. Space is for all, and that is absolutely true. We also want to make sure space works for the rest of us. The vast majority of humanity will not venture into the deep black of space or the near brown of space, as some will discuss. But the benefits of space are already here through GPS, through experiments on the International Space Station. We just need to make those more tangible and more real as more happens in space. GPS is often used as a good example of smart space infrastructure, and that's absolutely true. That happened decades ago. We in the space industry can't rest on that and continue to point back to it any more than we can point back to Apollo and said, been there, done that. It's always about what have we done for America today? And ultimately, it always will be that. And that is where the community of doers, the ability for us to jam ideas together and create new and exciting possibilities is what animates us. So I've talked about a lot about the sort of animating features of us at the foundation. We are a science and education advocacy nonprofit. We are the sort of single issue nonprofit that is discussed usually when discussing social issues. We have the goal of creating this infrastructure development corporation, a public-private partnership between the federal government and the private sector. And that is it. That is what success looks like. There is not a perpetual motion machine prepared. Blue Marble Week is a event that as we move forward, we will want to endure. But the foundation itself is meant as a catalyst for change, for innovation and growth. And we will see where that takes us. Because at the end of the day, we are not the important part. The ideas you are bringing to the table is what will make the change. We are merely the messengers and the carriers of said message. So who are we? We aim to be a microcosm of America, a cross-section of what America looks like, thinks like, acts like, and is. We're not there yet, and we're looking to change that. But we know we're not there, and we know what right looks like, so to speak. And right doesn't look like a dozen versions of me dancing on the head of a needle. We already broadly represent the political spectrum in the US, with libertarians and social democrats having delightful debates about the merits of government involvement in infrastructure planning. And this is one of the things that has made our efforts in Congress stronger. We've interacted with the better part of 100 congressional offices over the past several months. And because we have had such a diversity of thought inside the foundation, there has only been a handful of questions that weren't already raised. And most of those questions were around what happens when you win. The questions of how much, who will, when, and even objections from across the different parties, we were able to answer, in part because people like you at earlier Blue Marble events asked those questions after our presentations, provided feedback, or asked why we included things we did. And that prepared us. So when we walked into Congress, we looked like everything was as polished and well thought out as it could be. We have a range of experiences, from executives in Fortune 500 companies to current students, from prior military to manufacturing. We know that there are distinct phases in our lives that we go through, from advocating and fighting against the system when we're young, to attempting to preserve what we have because it works for us. And those differences as we move through life, if we're able to harness them, if the young are able to be guided and assisted as they advocate for change, and if those with experience are able to impart that, we're able to have a better outcome. And we're excited that we at the foundation are able to bring in the next generation of space entrepreneurs, space adjacent professionals, and let them learn from the scars of those who went before. You'll hear from speakers over the next couple of days about workforce development initiatives that we and others are doing. And it's ultimately about a kindergarten to orbit pipeline. But to do that, we need the full range of experiences and educational and attainment backgrounds. What are we doing? Most of this I've already talked about, but it is ultimately about preparing for what happens when we win. And win is sort of a aggressive term. But America likes winners. And it's our belief and our hope that the sort of space infrastructure and the community we're building is a win that, maybe unlike Tom Brady's win last night, is something all America can get behind and believe in. But why? Why now? Why here? I mentioned that our future as a nation and as a people is up. And that's true whether you want to solve global warming, whether you want economic expansion, whether you believe America should continue to lead the international order, or that the international order should be democratized. And that's because ultimately, as a species, humanity explores. Since we emerged from the cradle of civilization, humans curious about what lies over the next hill have always wandered over it. And for too long, we've had no hills to wander on. And it's time to reclaim the idea of a frontier as a good. Historically, frontiers have been associated with colonization and the harming of peoples and creatures so that the elite could benefit. Now we have an opportunity to make our lives and fortunes on a frontier where the damage and risk is incurred by those who adventure and not on the backs of the labor of others. But first, we have to overcome the hurdle and the idea that space is some sort of fiction or fantasy that children believe in, but ultimately has no bearing now. And this gets to the idea of delivering the benefits of space back home every day in a very tangible way. We believe that that is eminently possible, but it must be at the forefront of everything we in the space industry do. Because ultimately, whether we like it or not, the adoption of space, like any other technology, requires more than the early enthusiasts and early adopters. We have to cross that chasm of credibility. The last of our whys is related to the idea that being told no is something that happens to other people, that limits are what others put on us to constrain us. And so as we go out and talk about wild, crazy, ambitious projects in space that many of you have been working on for years, it gives us a little bit of joy and a lot of energy when we hear people say it can't be done. Because as we come back to these events, we hear from you that you're already doing them. Lila mentioned in the intro the sort of how can you help that Ted asks, so to speak. If you're here speaking, and if you're watching on one of our live streams, there's a better than average chance you are a useful collaborator and that we want a formal partnership, whether it's with Blue Marble Week, our educational efforts, our advocacy efforts. But then individually, we need people from across the country to help us advocate with their representatives and senators with the support of our government relations team. This is often as easy as us providing a form or standardized letter for your review, signature, and then we deliver it to your representative on your behalf. And then finally, referrals for donations, whether it's from you, your friends, your family. As we go forward and expand our efforts, this need becomes greater. But at the end of the day, a great need is easily met with a great number of people. So $1 million donations need not be a threshold for entry. We prefer more and smaller to big and splashy. I'll end here because for Michael's first time, he now has me cutting into his time. And so he's welcome.
Thank you, Tim. That was great. And, I can't echo that enough, that it takes all of us to make this change happen. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting in any way possible.